Diana, thank you for giving birth to such a cute baby. Let's be happy together.
You're too emotional.
A man holding a newborn baby with teary eyes and a woman watching warmly. From the outside, they looked like a very happy family. But the man with teary eyes is my husband, Tony Clark. And the woman watching is my sister Diana. This is not a happy family scene. It's a despicable scene of betrayal. I made up my mind and stepped forward in front of them. Of course, Tony and Diana were surprised, but there was no sign of remorse.
Because you wouldn't have a child, I did it for you.
Yeah, I'm divorcing you and living happily with Diana.
Fine, if that is what they want. But they will face the punishment I've prepared. From behind me, 30 relatives came out one after another. Of course, they were members of the Clark family, Tony's relatives. As Tony and Diana turned pale, I smiled sweetly, ready to fight back. Congratulations and best of luck. My name is Emily Clark, and I am 30 years old. I don't have children and live a quiet life as an ordinary office worker with my husband, Tony. We met through a friend's introduction and got married 2 years ago, but our marriage hasn't been great. Right after we got married, Tony became colder than before. He does housework but is indifferent towards me. He is also uncooperative about having children. Lately, we've been sleeping in separate bedrooms like mere roommates. I wonder if I lack charm as a woman. Looking at myself in the mirror, I sigh. Looking at my plain appearance makes me feel uneasy because it inevitably brings back unpleasant memories from my past. I've been bullied by my beautiful older sister Diana since childhood. Maybe it was a genetic twist, but Diana was outstandingly good-looking in my family. Diana, who was exceptionally beautiful even among our relatives, had been doted on and praised by adults since childhood. Our parents never treated us differently based on our looks, but the moment we were among our relatives, the difference became clear. Every time a relative said, "You could be a celebrity," or "You look like an actress," Diana's confidence grew, and she looked down on me for not being praised.
Emily, aren't you sad with that appearance? No, I'm not. Really? I couldn't stand it. I'd be too embarrassed to live with a face like that,
Diana would say, pulling my hair and mocking my face. I couldn't tell our parents about the bullying I faced from Diana when we were alone. I didn't want to make them sad. I didn't realize that my silence only encouraged Diana. My self-esteem, repeatedly crushed since childhood, was deeply damaged. I lost confidence and tried to live unnoticed. Even then, I couldn't escape from my sister Diana. She would soon take any man I liked. I was shocked when a senior I had a crush on in middle school started dating Diana.
I am sorry, Emily. He was really persistent. It is okay. Well, he wouldn't go for you anyway. You can't help it.
I remember crying all night and my eyes being red when I found out. But what shocked me even more was that Diana quickly got bored with that senior. When Diana dumped him so easily, it was as if she enjoyed seeing me in despair. I couldn't compete with her in either face or figure. So I focused on studying at least. We were opposite sisters. Around the time I started high school, my parents, who didn't seem to have such a bad relationship, suddenly got divorced. I was surprised by my parents' divorce. I went with my dad, and Diana went with my mom and moved away. I was so sad to be separated from my mom, but the relief of being away from Diana was greater. I have not seen Diana since then. Sometimes through my dad, I heard things like Diana started college or she's working as a secretary at a local company. But it went in one ear and out the other because I didn't care. When I got married, I soon informed my mom, but I didn't say anything to Diana. So I felt at ease. I would later come to realize, much to my dismay, that Diana was far more of a villain than I had ever imagined. One day, it was a middle school reunion. I didn't have good memories of middle school because of Diana, but I was blessed with great classmates. I spent nostalgic moments with old friends at a hotel venue. Among them, I reunited with my friend named Kate Wilson. She was the class president back then, a responsible and caring person. After chatting for a while, she said something surprising.
By the way, I heard your sister Diana had a baby. Congratulations.
What? A baby? I was taken aback by the sudden news, and Kate seemed surprised in a different way.
Oh, sorry. Maybe I shouldn't have been the one to tell you. Her belly was so big, I thought you already knew.
Actually, our parents divorced when we were in high school, so we lived separately. Diana had a baby? Kate nodded with a guilty expression. Kate, who works as a nurse at a hospital in the city. That's when she saw Diana coming in for prenatal checkup. Kate looked awkward because she felt bad about revealing a patient's privacy.
Oh, I see. So your parents got divorced. Sorry, please keep this between us.
Yeah, of course. But to think that Diana is pregnant. I hadn't heard anything about her getting married, so she's planning to be a single mom. I hadn't heard anything from my dad, but my mom would know the details. When I got home, I called my mom to confirm it. My mom, sounding tired, confirmed the truth.
Yes, that's right. But she won't tell me who the father is. Yet Diana insists on having the baby. I've told your dad too, but there's nothing we can do since she's determined.
I see. My dad must have been trying hard to hide it from me so I wouldn't worry. Even my mom, who had always promised not to trouble me, showed concern for me. Indeed, with my parents divorced, Diana's pregnancy had nothing to do with me. Feeling somewhat relieved, I hung up my phone. At that moment, Tony came home. My current worry was more about Tony than Diana. As usual, he didn't even look at me and just said coldly,
I'll work overtime more often from now on.
"Even more? Is your work that busy, period?"
Of course it is. You wouldn't understand it, working at a small company. I'm going to be the next president. I'm not like you, just goofing around.
It hurts to hear that, even though I'm not just goofing around. But when someone speaks to me strongly, I immediately become timid and can only say, "I'm sorry."
As long as you understand.
Satisfied with my reaction, Tony quickly headed for the bathroom. At that moment, I smelled a sweet fragrance wafted from him. It was a sweet scent reminiscent of women perfume, and I was startled. Could Tony be cheating on me? Is that why he's treating me so poorly? A woman flashed behind him. One Saturday, Tony had to stay overnight for his company training session. When I asked where it was and what kind of training, he wouldn't give me any details. He snapped, "Why do I have to tell you that? It's none of your business." This only made me more suspicious that he might be meeting someone else. With my anxiety, I received a call from an unexpected person. It was Diana. We had not been in touch since our parents' divorce. Wondering what she wanted, I nervously answered her call.
Hello. Oh, Emily. Long time no see.
Diana started talking with the same energy as before. She's already 31, but she still talks like a teenager. After some small talk, she got to the main point.
I heard from Mom that you found out about my pregnancy.
Yeah, Diana, are you really going to have the baby?
Of course, yes. You'll be an aunt, so I'll let you know when my baby is born.
That was fine, but I had to ask what I was worried about. Who's the father? Mom is really worried.
Don't worry, I wasn't abandoned. It's just a bit complicated.
Is it complicated? At that moment, I heard a man's voice calling her softly in the background. The low voice calling her name. The moment I heard that, chills ran down my spine.
I am on the phone right now.
Diana hurriedly covered the microphone and spoke to the person.
Sorry, did you hear that?
No, is anyone there? I forced myself to stay calm. I could not let her know that I had realized something. I decided it immediately.
No, it's nothing.
Diana seemed relieved and started wrapping up the conversation. She gave a chuckling goodbye.
Talk to you later, Emily.
After the call ended, I collapsed to the floor. 3 months later, I received a message from Diana.
The baby was born safely. It's a cute baby boy.
Attached was a photo of the adorable newborn, full of happiness. I simply replied, "Congratulations," to Diana, who had just gone through childbirth. Tony suddenly stood up from the couch. He began pacing nervously around the living room, gripping his phone tightly. Watching him calmly, I spoke up to him. "What's wrong, Tony? You seem awfully restless."
It is nothing.
Tony rarely mumbled like that. He didn't notice my cold gaze. Then 5 days later, Tony said he had an urgent matter and he went out. But I knew where he was heading. After seeing him leave, I quickly made arrangements. It was the retribution I had been preparing for him over the past 3 months. Once all the calls were made, I got into a taxi and headed to a certain place. I arrived at a big hospital in the city. As I waited at the entrance, I saw a happy-looking couple walking from the inside. The man, Tony, was holding a baby joyfully in his arms. Next to him stood Diana, looking pleased after her big task.
Diana, thank you for giving birth to such a beautiful baby. Let's be happy together.
You're too emotional.
Today was Diana's discharge day. I was dizzy at the sight of a scene, but I could not afford to lose consciousness here. Steadying myself, I stood in front of the two as they unknowingly exited the hospital.
Emily,
Why are you here?
Yes. His affair partner was none other than Diana. The voice I heard on the phone that day was Tony's. I couldn't believe it at the first, but the investigation by the detective agency confirmed their affair. I crossed my arms and glared at them with unprecedented anger and disdain in my eyes. I came to visit Diana, but to think the other person was Tony. You both look very happy, but happiness built on an affair doesn't last long.
what did you say, acting all high and mighty?
He probably didn't like my unusually defiant attitude. Despite being the perpetrator, Tony had the nerve to say that to me. Standing next to him, Diana also scolded me as if I were the perpetrator.
Because you never had a child, I did it for you.
That is right. I'm divorcing you and living happily with Diana.
Tony emphasized the word divorce. He probably thought it would shock me, but it had no effect for me. I was already prepared for the divorce. I came here today to make them understand. I raised my right hand. That was the signal to let them know they could come forward. Acting high and mighty, huh? Don't you all agree? Behind me stood about 30 allies. They were members of the Clark family, all Tony's relatives. Seeing them, Tony was stunned and nearly collapsed.
Dad, Mom, even my uncles.
Tony's relatives were filled with anger, but the fury of his parents was especially intense. Not wanting to meet their gaze, Tony glared at me and shouted,
You're such a coward, Emily, dragging my relatives into this mess.
but his dad interrupted him.
The coward is you, Tony.
Oh no, Dad.
When I heard about this, I called everyone here to give my foolish son a lesson. Tony, how could you do such a thing?
Standing next to him, his mom, holding back tears, also spoke up.
An affair with Diana, of all people. And you even had a child together? What were you thinking?
Tony's dad, the president of the company, felt especially betrayed since he'd been grooming Tony to be the next president. His mom, who cared about the family's reputation, found Tony's infidelity utterly unacceptable. I had hired a detective agency to gather all evidence. When I informed them, Tony's parents sided with me over their son. Tony had always been selfish, so he likely didn't have much trust from his parents. However, Tony himself showed no remorse for his actions.
What do you mean? I'm going to divorce Emily and marry Diana. We're going to file the divorce papers and then the marriage and birth registrations. The order is correct, isn't it?
I could not believe he had the nerve to say that. Before I could express my outrage, Tony's dad spoke up in anger.
It's not about the order. It's about ethics. You lack so many things as a human being.
Then his dad put a hand on the shoulder of a man standing nearby.
You can't be the president like this. I've already decided that Alex will be the next president. Get out of the company.
Are you sure, Dad?
It was Alex, Tony's brother. Alex, my brother-in-law, looked at Tony with cold eyes.
Tony, you've really disappointed me. If you can't even take care of your family, how can you take care of the company?
Alex, you.
Tony glared at Alex with a fiery gaze. And as for Diana, her face changed color the moment she heard Tony's dad's words to leave his company.
Wait, Tony. You said your family accepted us.
Diana, this isn't the time for that.
This isn't the time? That's the most important thing.
Tony and Diana started arguing loudly. Apparently, Tony had told Diana that their remarriage due to their affair was accepted. But it was all a lie. Tony had lied to both me and Diana for his own convenience.
I can't believe this. You said you were Emily's husband and the next president, so I thought it would be fun to take you away. If you can't be president, you're useless.
Of course, I was the one who spoke up and said, "Wait a minute. That must be fun to take from others." I just could not let those words go unnoticed. Diana, did you really find it that enjoyable to take my husband away from me? It was really hard to believe. But Diana confirmed even that shocking truth. Without any sign of her remorse, she said it cheerfully.
Of course, taking something from you is the greatest pleasure for me. When I heard your husband was the next president, I was excited. I could enjoy taking him from you and get a luxurious life. That's why I had the baby. But if he's not going to be the next president, that's a huge miscalculation.
According to the detective agency's report, Tony and Diana's encounter was accidental. It started when Diana returned a forgotten umbrella to Tony. But from Diana's words now, it was clear it was all part of her plan. She approached Tony knowing he was my husband. I thought she was a devil. The Clark relatives who witnessed this seemed to feel the same way, looking at me with sympathy. I am so frustrated that I almost shed tears. At that moment, my parents, who had been standing behind the Clark family, stepped forward. I asked them to be here today. My parents, who had been watching the events unfold in shock, finally stepped forward when they saw Diana attacking me. With a mixture of sadness and anger, they stood in front of me.
Enough, Diana. Dad, Mom too.
Mom marched up to Diana and stood before her. Then, with tears streaming down her face, she raised her right hand and slapped Diana across the cheek.
What are you doing? That's what I should be asking you. To think the father of my grandchild is Tony. What was the point of us pretending to divorce? Pretending to divorce?
Diana was stunned, her hand on her cheek. With her tears still falling, my mom explained. Diana had always been harsh with me. I tried my best to hide it, but our parents had noticed. They had thought we were just a pair of sisters who didn't get along, but as we entered adolescence, they realized our relationship was far from normal. Diana's obsession with me was severe and could not be ignored. My mom, fearing that Diana would ruin my life, suggested to my dad that they separate us. Indeed, back then, Diana constantly insulted my appearance, hit me over trivial matters, and took away people I liked. Our parents had noticed and were worried, so they pretended to divorce to separate us. They didn't tell us the reason because I was trying to hide Diana's harassment, and they wanted to respect my feelings. They also knew Diana wouldn't accept the truth, so they said it was for their own reasons. I was surprised when my parents revealed it to me while discussing the situation with Tony and Diana. But I also felt their love for me and was grateful. Diana, who knew nothing, was shocked.
Pretending to divorce. Why would you do that? Because you were always attacking Emily, but I never imagined it was this bad. We should have kept you apart sooner.
Exactly. It is shameful for you to use a child like this, even as an adult.
My parents scolded her and stood by my side. Their presence gave me strength. I would no longer be swayed by my toxic sister. With a smile, I addressed the two betrayers. I'm done. I'm cutting ties with you. Congratulations, and be happy. It was my sincere words of congratulations. The judgment of Tony and Diana took place in the front of the hospital. When it was over, all relatives quickly went home, leaving me with strong words of support, saying to rely on them if I ever needed anything. It seemed Kate, the nurse, had witnessed the commotion, and later she asked me what had happened, which was awkward. Still, I explained the situation, grateful for her help in discovering Diana's pregnancy. Our divorce proceedings between Tony and me went smoothly. With the support from my in-laws, I received substantial alimony from Tony and Diana. However, the emotional wounds they inflicted on me would take time to heal. Of course, their betrayal was too terrible. But I endured thanks to my in-laws' consideration, Kate's encouragement, and most importantly, my parents' unwavering support. They had been in a difficult position, but stood by me through the ordeal. And I'm deeply grateful. My parents regretted not acting sooner, but never imagined Diana's obsession was so severe. Even I hadn't expected Diana to go this far. I don't blame my parents. Meanwhile, Tony and Diana seemed to have no choice but to get married officially. The two of them happily became a couple, but Diana seemed to lament that her life wasn't what she had imagined.
I was supposed to be the president's wife, not living in poverty.
Tony, having been kicked out of his company, had no significant assets. As declared that day, Tony's brother Alex was chosen as the next president, leaving Tony with nowhere to go. Relying on his dad's influence, he struggled to find a new job. He ended up being hired only for manual labor and was being used as an apprentice construction worker. Despite his efforts to support Diana and their child, his love didn't seem to reach her. To my shock, Diana abandoned her child and ran away from Tony. This left Tony in despair, totally dejected. Trying to manage as a single father proved too difficult, and he turned to his parents for help. Seeing his struggle, Tony's parents took in their grandchild to care for them, while Tony became a shadow of his former self. The Clark family pitied the child who was deprived of loving parents and supported Tony's parents in raising the child. Meanwhile, Tony abandoned parenting and disappeared from his parents' home. His relatives are now searching for him to seize child support payments. He must have considered it a serious love. Diana was beautiful and had a mysterious charm that attracted men. In middle school, she had discarded the person I liked like a worn-out rag. She hadn't changed at all since then.
What a foolish girl. That's what happens when you don't marry someone you truly love.
Mom said sadly. As for me, I sold the house I shared with Tony and started living in an apartment. I also started going out with my parents occasionally. It was a gentle and peaceful time, like reclaiming the family bonding and happiness we had missed. I was finally beginning to heal my wounds from my childhood. After that, as I threw myself into my work, I was entrusted with a major project. Can someone like me handle being the leader?
Emily, you have a strong sense of responsibility, and you're good at your job. Your patience is also one of your strengths.
My boss, John, who appointed me as the project leader. But I still lacked my confidence. Do you really think so? I felt that my patience had only enabled Diana's behavior. However, John's next words struck a chord with me.
Leaders need to endure a lot, but they must not be crushed by it and should be able to make decisions when necessary. I believe you have that strength.
Thank you, John. Somebody had been watching over me. All my past efforts hadn't been in vain. With this newfound confidence, I accepted the role of leader and worked harder. Our small company, which Tony had belittled, began to thrive. I don't know how much of that was due to my efforts, but my superiors recognized my hard work. My salary have increased significantly, allowing me to live a more comfortable life. Enjoying my long-lost single life, I found myself 33 years old. 3 years had passed since the divorce scandal. That day, I came home to my apartment late at night. Despite being exhausted from my work, I felt fulfilled, but I was shocked to see the person standing in front of my door. The person was wearing a hood pulled low over their face and had their face wrapped in bandages. I instinctively took a defensive stance, thinking it was an intruder, a person who looks like a ghost. But when her eyes met mine and she spoke, I was shocked to recognize her.
Emily, help me.
That voice, Diana? To my shock, the suspicious person turned out to be Diana. How did you find out where I live?
I followed you from your office before.
Diana shamelessly confessed to her stalker behavior. The skin visible from the edges of her bandages had a dull color. I could not understand why she looked like that, but Diana just kept crying. Not wanting to attract attention from passersby, I brought her inside. Once she calmed down with the tea I had made, she began to explain. Diana had suffered from her failed cosmetic surgery. Or rather, it was not a single failure. She had undergone multiple surgeries, faced skin problems, and kept fixing them, even altering her bone structure until she reached a point of no return. In essence, she had trapped herself in a vicious cycle. Now, she could not even go to work and had quit her job.
Look at this.
She showed me her face, which no longer resembled the beautiful Diana I once knew. Her skin was red like burn marks, and her nose and mouth had a different structure. I was stunned by her transformation. Why did you get surgery? You didn't need it. Diana, who had been praised for her beauty since childhood. But shaking her head, she said bitterly,
It wasn't enough. I had to be even more beautiful. I needed to catch a better man and be happy this time.
I shivered at those her words. Despite taking my husband, she still spoke like that. She had abandoned her baby and only cared about herself. And her efforts were completely misguided. She glared at me with a sharp look.
Emily, you've really improved your appearance. You must be making a lot of money. I still need more surgery. Lend me some money.
Why should I lend you money? You took my happiness from me. It was not just my husband. She had ruined many of my childhood memories. I had endured it all with my resilience, but I wasn't a child who could only endure anymore. I had resolved to judge Tony and Diana 3 years ago. Even if she begged, I wouldn't forgive her. You were born beautiful, but you wished for others' misfortune, and now you're suffering. You should face your heart, not your face.
Emily.
Diana, you found happiness in making me miserable, but happiness measured by others' misfortune isn't real happiness. Face yourself properly. What I had wanted to say for so long hit the mark. Diana broke down in her tears on the table. She was a foolish woman who had misunderstood happiness for many years. But I had no duty or compassion to save her. I quietly watched her smile back. After a while, Diana, looking completely dejected, left with slumped shoulders. Her retreating figure looked weaker than ever. Diana, who had only found happiness in others' misfortune since childhood. Facing herself would be her challenging path. A year later, my mom, who occasionally checked on Diana, told me something surprising. Diana got a job?
Yes, it's a temp job, but she's working as a building cleaner. I'm relieved she's finally working.
My mom, who had gone through so much, now had significantly more gray hair. Diana, who used to work glamorously as a secretary. Because she was so prideful, I had braced myself for the possibility that she wouldn't work for a while. I was worried that my parents would have to bear the burden, so it was good news for me. Diana probably chose to be a cleaner because she would meet fewer people and could hide her face with a mask. But I wondered if a job chosen for such reasons would last. With a hint of unease, I watched the situation quietly. Sure enough, less than a month into her new job, Diana revealed her true colors. She stole cash from the first safe she encountered as a cleaner. To my surprise, her accomplice was Tony, who was supposed to be missing. It turned out the two of them had been secretly in contact all along. The company they stole from was one Tony had connections with during his previous employment, so he knew the location of the safe and the security details. Using their cunning, they planned and executed the crime. However, the security system wasn't so lax. They were quickly identified and arrested. The Clark family, who had been searching for Tony, was furious about this heinous act. Already holding a negative view of Tony and Diana due to my situation, the two had now completely turned the Clark family against them. Tony's parents, who had been diligently raising their grandchild, declared they would never forgive this betrayal.
I do not care about that foolish son anymore. We're cutting all ties with him.
Where did we go wrong?
My mom, who met Tony's parents in court, told me they looked deeply distressed. Naturally, my parents also lost all affection for Diana. They told her that they wouldn't help her anymore, even after she finished her sentence for theft.
Why are you abandoning me?
Diana, you're an adult now. Reflect on your crimes properly and live independently.
Just because we're family doesn't mean you can do whatever you want. We and Emily have our own lives. You need to stand on your own.
My parents firmly conveyed this during a visit. Even Diana was left speechless and dejected. Now, my parents live together in a new house. I've also moved to a different apartment, so Diana doesn't know where any of us live. Tony and Diana, who only thought of themselves and eventually turned to crime. What happens to them after their release is up to fate. As for me, now 34 years old, I continue to focus on my work. Our company has grown and even built a new office near the station. Having become a mid-level employee, I now have many junior coworkers. As a section chief, I serve as the right hand to my boss, John.
Emily, I'd like to talk about the upcoming project.
Sure. Should we meet in the conference room? John leaned in and whispered,
I found a nice restaurant. How about we discuss it there?
John, mixing work with private isn't appropriate.
Oh, I'm sorry.
John gave a slightly embarrassed smile at my admonishment. He's been approaching me recently. At first, I was confused, but I wasn't entirely opposed to the idea of someone I had admired for so long. However, my reluctance to marry again made it difficult for me to say yes. Still, he kindly says, I'll wait as long as it takes. I'm currently taking comfort in his patience. But if it's not about the project, then it's fine.
What?
A delicious restaurant. Won't you take me there? When I answered, John's face lit up. I'm gradually being drawn to his genuine nature, much like a big, friendly dog. It might take a bit more time, but I want to nurture this slowly. I finally found my own happiness.